can see that we have present Councillors Buchanan, Dewar, Councillor Equi and Councillor Equi. Also present today are Councillors Ferguson and Gowland. Councillor Keat, I'm not seeing you present. Also present today are Councillors Lockhart, Mars and Nugent. We have a number of officers present, and with that I'll pass back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. If we move on to item number 1, which is there any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Going to item number 2, and that's the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6. Can we agree those minutes, please?
Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mars. Okay, moving on to item number 3A. And that's the capital budget monitoring 2024 to 2025, the general fund capital programme, pages 7 to 28. And if I can ask Lorraine O'Hagan to take us through, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So agenda item 3A then is the capital monitoring position for the period to the 1st of November. Section 4 of your report provides details of the total programme for the year, which in section 4.1 notes the programme at 69.832 million. That includes revisions to the programme that were approved by the Council's Executive Committee last week, which is a decrease to the programme, which we will come on to in a second in Appendix A. The forecast for the year is still being shown as 69.832 million. That's what we're working to try and achieve. We do have the next 3 months and 4 months since this report was written to see how much we can spend in terms of maximising the progress of the projects within the programme. But at the moment, we're aiming for the 69.8. Or sorry, 69.1, and we're looking at an underspend of 700,000. Now, section 4.3 gives you a bit of detail of that area of underspend. There were 3 projects that had budgets allocated to them, Lanark Road Signalisation, Clyde Bridge and Dare Bridge. These, in the current year, were reflecting project savings of 700,000 against those budget allocations. And given the fact they're roads-related projects, we're looking to carry that budget forward into the next financial year as part of the capital programme for 25-26. So that's why we're showing a £700,000 underspend in the current year. And that's been agreed by Executive Committee as part of the paper that went last week. The Council has recently received confirmation of the levelling up funding for the Three Rivers and Clydesdale Way project, and that's noted in section 4.4 over on page 8. Now that we've got that confirmation, we'll work towards a profile of spend in terms of, again, we've only got a few months left of the current year, so anything that doesn't fully spend in that project will be carried forward at the year end. It's quite a sum of money, and I'm not sure how much we'll be able to achieve in the current year, but officers within Community and Enterprise Resources are working to establish a profile of spend there. Section 4.5 notes the spend position as at the 1st of November, and that's spend of 21.114 million, and we've got funding at that point in the year of 42.202. If I can take you over to the exceptions that were approved by Executive Committee, and those are on page 10. There are a number there that are moving around between financial years. So we've got additional allocation of 250,000 for the Priory Changing Pavilion that was agreed at Executive Committee. But because of the timescales of that project, we're looking to slip 236 of that into the next financial year. It's a similar story with Lanark Library, where we're looking to slip 442,000 of spend into the year, and that's really just reflecting the profile of the expenditure as the project progresses. Langlands West there, again, a bit of slippage because of the timing of works concluding at the Greenhill Road project, which was completely dependent on the external contractor completing the remediation works, or completing their works to allow our remediation works to commence, in terms of the Langlands West project itself. So we're slipping 450 to next year. Hamilton Junction's upgrade work, we've been trailing this for a couple of periods now. Discussions have been ongoing with the contractor, and because of the contractor's availability and also the need to avoid other scheduled works in the Hamilton area, works won't commence until January 2025. So that project will now straddle 2 financial years. So that's quite a sizable amount that's slipping into the new year, but it is just reflecting timescales. And we were working with the contractor to try and achieve the majority of spend, or the maximum spend we could this year. Clyde Bridge project, that project substantially complete, and I've noted in the earlier commentary about the underspend on that project, which is sitting to the side. But as well as that, we have a retention payment that we're carrying forward the £192,000 for, and that won't be required until next financial year. And then the final one for community and enterprise is the Hamilton Station Park and Ride. So we brought quite an amount of money into the programme this financial year. We always suspected it would fall into the new financial year, but we just didn't know how much of the project, or in terms of the spend rather. So it is profiled over the end of this year into next year, and the bit that's slipping into the new financial year is spend of about £1.4 million. The final one there was in housing and technical resources, and that's the spend on the alarms analogue to digital fire alarm system upgrade. And again, working with providers to try and ascertain timescales for that project work, and we're looking to slip £607,000 into the new year, again, simply to reflect the timescales for that programme of work. If I can take you on to Appendix B then, that just shows you how the programme has moved from last period to this period, so 76.9 down to 69.8, and we've got the particular budget across the 5 resources there as well. And then across the page in Appendix C, page 13, there's a bit more detail there across the individual services of the resources, but again, culminating in the budget of 69 million and the spend to date of 21 million in the bottom right-hand corner. The next page, Appendix D, provides you with a summary of our funding package for the programme as a whole. So again, a fully funded programme, 69.8 and 69.8 of funding. The forecast spend noted as the 69.1, which reflects the 700,000 in the roads projects, and anything we don't spend this year will be carried forward into next year. And that's all for the financial side. Thanks, Chair. If I can hand over to Derek.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. Derek, could I ask you to request to speak again, please? Chair, sorry to interrupt. We seem to be having a problem introducing Derek into the meeting. It is showing. Bear with me.
Chair, if it's okay, will I go through these papers until we get a hold of Derek? And if there's any questions, then we can take them back for him.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, so Appendix C then is the Build Executive Summary to the 1st of November. And at this point, we have no projects that are being noted as behind profile. If I can take you onto the non-bill page, that's on page 17. And again, that just gives you a summary of the number of projects that we have and the status. And again, there are no projects noted as being behind. Appendix F details the list of non-build projects and their status. And then if you move on to Appendix G, which is on page 20, we have the Roads Executive Summary, which shows, again, no projects behind programme. But we do have some information on some held projects or altered brief projects for roads, and those are over on page 21 for your information. And again, if there's any questions on those ones, we can take them back to our roads colleagues. And then from pages 22 on to 28, I think 27, sorry, You can see the individual roads projects across the whole South Lanarkshire area, and again, the status for every individual project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine. So do you have any questions on section 3A? Councillor Lockhart.
Hi, thank you, Chair. A couple of things. First of all, what is a retention payment? I mean, we've built the bridge, it's all been paid for and all the rest of it. It's a very large chunk of money going to who and for what, please?
Hi, Councillor Lockhart, thanks. I don't know the details of what the retention payment's for, but I am aware of the just general, I'm sure you are too, for any project of that magnitude, we always hold back a little bit of money in terms of that kind of final sign-off for the bridge and make sure everything's working okay. So yes, I do appreciate your question in terms of what can't be working for a bridge because it's up and operating. So I'll find out from the roads colleagues and I can come back to you on that if that's okay.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think we should hold things up, you know, until we've had a good look at it, because I know how these things work. They slap something on at the end, and then you pay it rather too tamely, I think.
Yeah, in my experience, it's probably the other way around in terms of we're holding it back. We won't pay it to them until we're comfortable that everything's okay. So, but no, I'll ask the question of roads and I can come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. My second question is really a more general one. I mean, bearing in mind the background picture where we have a huge amount which is unspent. I mean, almost 2/3 seems to remain unspent. And I'm referring really to the big picture on page 13, where if you look through it, I mean, it's a stunning difference. If you take the first column and the last column, and we've only got 1/4 to go, there is 2/3, what, about £40 million roughly unspent. And I'd maybe just like a little more detail on how we finish up with that. And then second part is, what do we do with that 40 million quid which we're not using? Where does that sit?
Thanks, Chair. We're just doing a wee bit of a wee chat here between ourselves because we've been looking at this ourselves, just in terms of the amount of spend that's still to take place before the end of the financial year, and there are a few bits and pieces. So I mentioned earlier, we've got the Three Rivers and Clydesdale Way project, so that's quite a substantial amount of money that we need to work towards spending before the end of the year. We've got some play park spend that's still to go through. We've got Leisure and Culture Transformation Fund still to go through. So these are all quite big ticket items, all quite high profile and quite substantial sums. In terms of what happens to the 40 million, if that's what you're asking, anything that doesn't get spent this year will carry forward into next year. If you're asking about the cash flow side of things, it's all mixed up in the world of managing our finances on a daily basis that we do in our treasury management team to make sure we've got money when we need it to make the spend on certain items. So we kind of trail, and we've got a kind of cash flow projection towards the end of the year in terms of what we anticipate spending. And that's what allows us to manage our requirement to borrow or not to borrow externally. So I know you know quite a bit about that from the Finance and Corporate Committee process. So there's nothing sitting there doing nothing. There's no money sitting there doing nothing. It will be spent. It's just when it will be spent that's the issue.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm making the point that it just seems an awfully large amount. We seem to have only spent 1/3, if you like, of what we budgeted for, and you're not carrying forward 40 million. Looking at the numbers that I've been going through, so I just feel that I'd like a little bit clearer picture of what's going on. That's the problem I have.
Thank you, Councillor Lockhart. I don't know, Lorraine, do you want to respond to that? Are you happy?
Thank you. I've got nothing else to add at the moment, but I can have a wee look at that and I can maybe come next time prepared with a bit more detail for you in terms of, hopefully by that point we'll have another probably 2 months worth of spend through the system, because we'll be coming back after period 10. It's only period 8 we're working on, so we'll get another 2 months of spend to come through, and at that point I'll maybe have a bit more of a realistic picture of what things are going to look like by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lockhart. So I don't think we've got any further questions. So can we agree those that report, please? Thank you, Councillor Mars. Okay, we move on to item 3B, and that's the Capital Budget Monitoring 2024 to 2025, the Housing Capital Programme. And that's on pages 29 to 34. And if you can hand back to Lorraine, please. And hopefully Derek's for this.
Thank you. So yes, this is the housing programme for the same time period, taking us to the 1st of November. So the revised programme for the year is 77.248 million. And as we've trailed previously, we are looking at an underspend in year. You can see that in section 4.6, where we have a forecast underspend of 5.142 million. And that's really within the affordable housing programme. And we're quoting there in that section 4.6 some delays in the site starts at Cairnswell Avenue in Cambuslang and Brackenhill Farm in Hamilton. And we've also seen a reduced price or a reduced average price in terms of our market purchase scheme. We had budgeted for 115,000 per property, and it's come down to 100,000 per property, just reflecting the size of the properties we're purchasing. So that's meant that we've underspent, I suppose, in that line. And again, anything that we don't spend, we'd look to carry forward into next year. And in terms of the level of government grant we will receive this year, we'll fully claim that first. So it would be council money we would be carrying forward into the next financial year. Section 4.5 talks about the actual spend position to the 1st of November, and we've spent 29.534 million, and we've got funding of the same amount. So in Appendix A on page 31, you can see the programme of 77.248, and you can also see the funding that makes up that programme. So we can see capital funded from current revenue, which is from the housing revenue account, prudential borrowing of 23 million, and the new build government grant from Scottish Government of 17, making up the bulk of it. And the next page then is the physical progress side, so we'll see if Derek's available. Thank you. No, Derek doesn't seem to be available.
No.
So you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. So the housing build programme then is detailed on page 32. And again, we're not quoting any projects behind programme, we just have one with an altered brief. So there's no information there to bring to members' attention. So that's the end of that.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions for that part? You got no questions, so can we agree that part, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mars. Moving on to item number 4, and that's the revenue budget monitoring 2024 to 2025. And we'll look at pages 35 to 40. And Lorraine, if you can take us through that again, please.
Thank you. So this is the revenue budget monitoring for both the general fund and the housing revenue account for the period to the 1st of November. So section 4 then picks up the general fund position, and we're showing an underspend of £8.9 million in the current year. Now, you may have seen this in the executive committee papers, and we've trailed it as well in the budget strategy paper back in November, where we have done some early outturn work in the current financial year, and we have a utilities underspend compared to what we had anticipated of £2 million and a council tax over recovery of £3.3 million. And we're looking to set them aside and consider them along with the local government settlement when we receive it in December. So we're showing those underspends in Appendix 1. The Executive Committee in November also approved the pay award funding of £3.6 million. The additional money that we got this year is to be set aside to contribute to the 25-26 pay award costs. So again, that's shown as an underspend in Appendix 1 and will be transferred to reserves at the end of the financial year for using next year or beyond. So section 4.5 just gives you some detail on a number of key budget issues, most of which, if not all, we've trailed previously. So in terms of teacher numbers, we had previously talked about the holdback position from the government in terms of waiting on our teacher numbers and the mitigations that were being put in place. You're probably aware now that we have had information in terms of getting the holdback monies now released for 24-25, so that helps us out in terms of getting a bit of certainty for the current year. Employers' pension contributions, again, what we're looking at there is additional allocation, and we've been told now that we'll get that money as part of our local government settlement, and we have been given a redetermination for that in the last week or so. So we know we're getting that money in. It'll come in at the end of the financial year formally. In terms of the Living Wage Foundation, this is just for information. The Living Wage Foundation announced on the 23rd of October the real living wage, which is voluntary, and it's higher than the government set national living wage, and it's based on the actual cost of living, and the rise is from £12 to £12.60 an hour. Just in terms of noting the council's position, we've reviewed our pay model, and we're just noting that the council's minimum hourly rate is 12.82, so that's for your information. In terms of the housing revenue account, what we're looking at is very simply a projected break-even on the housing revenue account for financial year 4-5, and I'll come to the details of that in the appendix. So page 38 then gives appendix 1, and that's the general fund position, and that's basically quoting the 8.9 million underspend that I just referred to there from council tax, from the pay award monies, and from utilities. And on the right-hand side of that page, you can see net surplus position of 26 million for the year, but that's really just a position statement. Overall, what we're forecasting is 8.9, and that 26 million is just at a point in time. The next page is the housing revenue account, and again, it's showing in the greyed out box the forecast position for the year, which is break even, as I just explained. Again, you've got a variance position on the right-hand column, but again, that year-to-date position is just at a point in time. So there's nothing else to highlight there. And that's all for that report. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lorraine. Do we have any questions? Nope, no questions. Okay, so can we agree that report, please? Thank you, Julia. Okay, moving on to item number 5. And that's the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2024 to 2025, the detailed resource analysis, pages 41 to 88. And if I can ask Graham Booth to take us through that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Again, this provides the detailed resource analysis, and I'll just run through them in resource order as normal, and again, happy to take any questions at each area as we get to them. In terms of the first resource, Community and Enterprise Resources, and at Appendix A on page 43, we have the summary position there for the resource showing a projected break-even position overall, again with some variances across services, mainly underspend in facilities and planning offset by an overspend in our roads, but overall coming back to a projected break-even position. And on pages 44 to 49, we have the individual variance explanations, again with any new explanations underlined. And on pages 50 to 52, there are the specific trends just in terms of each of the budget lines, and happy to take any questions specifically in relation to Community and Enterprise Resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Are there any questions? If we can move on, Graham, thank you.
Moving on next to Education Resources and Appendix B on page 53, again showing our overall break-even position against the budget of just under 464 million. And the variance explanations are in pages 54 to 56, with the trends the trends analysis on pages 57 to 58. And again, I'm happy to take any questions in relation to education. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Nope. Okay, Graham, if you can move on, please.
No problem. Finance and Corporate Resources is next, and Appendix C on page 59. and again showing a break-even position overall for the resource with some minor unders and overs, as I say, across services there, detailed for each of the service areas. And on pages 60 to 63, we have the variance analysis. Again, with anything underlined that is new, a new variance or a new projected variance from previously, and the trends analysis is on page 64 to 65. So again, can take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Graham. Do you have any questions? Yeah, we do. Councillor Lockhart.
Hi, Chair. Thank you. Just one question on the finance and corporate resources side. Almost everything showing a great deal of underspend, obviously all going to come in the last quarter. The one that seems to be very different in this is page, where are we, 59, information technology. Budget 6.8, already with a quarter to go, overspent by nearly 10 million. Can you explain that?
Yes, in terms of the IT budget specifically, it's made up of, as I say, an expenditure budget and also a significant income budget, just in terms of recharges out to specific resources. For, as I say, a lot of the budget is held centrally, but a lot of it is recharged out to resources, and some of that as well will happen at the end of the financial year once all the costs for the year are known. So, as I say, the 9.680 is just a timing in terms of the spend's been incurred, but the recharge in terms of out to the specific resources is yet to happen, and that will happen in the last quarter of the financial year. So, as I say, we are tracking that in terms of there's no specific variances standing out on our expenditure. It's mainly about the timing of the recharging of that to resources through the income.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Councillor Lockhart. We don't have any further questions. I'm happy to move on, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Housing and technical resources is next on page 67. And the general services, first of all, again showing a break-even position with an underspend on our housing services offset by an overspend on our property services. And the variance analysis is on page, or the variance explanations are on page 68 to 71 for the general services, and the trends are on page 72 to 74. Similarly, the HRA position in terms of the variance analysis are on page 75 to 76. And again, any new variances are underlined there. And again, happy to take any questions overall on the housing technical resources, either the general fund or the HRA position. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any questions? So, if we can move on to the next part, please.
Lastly then is our social work resources on the summary on page 79, and again showing a break-even position overall, and individually we're also showing a break-even on our adults and older people, which is delegated to the IGIB, and also, as I say, the non-delegated services overall are coming to break-even as well between them, with the overspend in children and families offset by the underspends in justice and performance and support. The variance analysis is on page 80 to 84, and the trends are on pages 85 to 87. Again, with anything new underlined, and happy to take any questions in relation to social work. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any questions? No. Okay, can we agree the report in its entirety?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mars. And if we go into item, we've got no urgent business. So I'd basically like to take the opportunity to thank you for your attendance, and also, and if everybody can have a nice festive time, and looking for a new happy new year as well in 2025. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.